if a guy with you if he died before Joe?
Yeah.
Yeah, he lived there when he first came to Hugo.
Yeah, Joe said he hired him as a teacher, and the guy needed a place to live, so.
Okay, this is the, I'll say Marier. People here say Marier. We've got the same Marier for some reason. Marier. So in 1925, Albert died. He's the son of my grandfather, Frank and Stephanie. So they obviously got this gravesite at that time. There was nobody else in the family buried. So as far as I know, Grandpa built this cross on cement. Probably on the farm. And so the family has been repainting that every few years. That'll be 100 years old next year. So, where's Vernon? Vernon, my dad's brother, Vernon is buried there. He lived in Forest Lake.
This was his first wife.
And the Marier implements there. He's there. The story is that after the war, World War II, he figured that everyone was coming back, go back to farming. And so they'd sell tractors. Well, they did a few years, but how many GIs went back to farming? Not too many. Farming was on the downhill slide.
Don? Don't know that way yet. Carol, when we get a chance, Carol wants to take the boat to Vernier.
Okay.
Go ahead. You're headed that way? What we got?
No, I'm right there. So you talk about Veterans Day. Here's my father, Walter. It'll be 80 years since D-Day in June, right? So he came about a week after D-Day. He came through that same area. So it'll be 80 years that he was in France, 80 years ago. And Grandpa Frank got him training in high school right before the war started. He knew the war was coming, and he got him trained as a machinist in Forest Lake. So when my dad was drafted, he became a machinist and ended up working on the P-51 fighter jets in France. And following, what's his name, the general?
Patton.
Patton. He followed Patton's army all the way through France. And just before the Battle of the Bulge, they sent him back to the U.S. on a 30-day visa. He had been there 3 years.
Oh.
But he had, him and his brother Narcissus was over here, had 30-day pass, and then they were going to go off to Japan. And everyone was going to be on the ground with rifles out.
Was he your uncle, you said?
That's my dad.
Oh. Okay.
So he got here, he got to Camp McCoy, Wisconsin, and he hired a taxi, him and a buddy. And on the way, the lights were all on. And they said, what's going on? You know, it's supposed to be blackout. And the cab driver says, don't you know, Japan just surrendered. He didn't know that. So we got here to St. Paul. My mother was in St. Paul with me. And she doesn't know he's coming. So she's ironing clothes, and he knocks on the door. She jumps over the basket of clothes. She's so excited. And he finds out, you know, Japan has surrendered on August 15th. That's my birthday. 1944. My birthday's 42. So I never saw my dad till I was 3. No, I had a dad. So that's the story there. He ends up being a mailman, but he was what, mayor of Hugo and president of the American Legion at different times. Next door here is my brother Wayne, who just died a few years ago. And he was in the army during Vietnam. But he wasn't in Vietnam, he was in Korea.
He went to Vietnam.
Yeah, he went to Vietnam and then went off to Korea.
All the way around. Went in Korea. Then he went to Vietnam.
Okay. Well, you tell the story.
When he came back from Vietnam, he was stationed at the Pentagon in Washington, and I was stationed at Aberdeen Proving Grounds in Maryland. So we drive back and forth to Minnesota for a long weekend. And after several months, now that he was back, then I got orders to go to Vietnam. And Lynn and I were just married. She was pregnant, and I went overseas. So I didn't see my son until he was 5 months old before I got home. But I spent a year there. And, Wayne died of Agent Orange, caused. He had the same cancer he did 6 months after he died.
Is that right?
So,
I've got friends that really has messed up their family, even their children.
going back to Vietnam.
10 years, 12 years. Another, another story is that Wayne ended up as a teletype operator in Korea, sending messages from the Vietnam generals back to Washington. The reason he got chosen for that was when he was first in the Army, the sergeant says, "Does anybody here know how to type?" He raises his hand. Brian has the same story. This-
We were both, yeah.
All I can figure is White Bear's got a good
Typing
typing
class.
class.
Did you have Patty Malloy?
Already typed like this.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so he ends up, so as he was dying from cancer, I spent a day with him. And at the end I says, "Well, what kind of messages were you sending from the generals?" And he says, "If I told you, they'd shoot me." Standard phrase, you know. And he dies a few weeks later.
You mentioned something like that. I'll tell you another interesting story. A year ago in January, one of my Navy friends stopped in Arizona to visit Judy and I. He and his sister. He was a friend from Chicago that we went to Rome together when we got in the Mediterranean and then, over Christmas time, 1964. And Jerry was sitting there on our couch, and he said, "Mike, have you ever stopped to realize that you and I were responsible for arming an atomic weapon?" And I thought for a minute, and I said, "Jerry, I never even told my dad that." But when we went aboard ship, if we were over in the Mediterranean, we had a hydrogen weapon mounted in an aircraft, and the aircraft was ready to go. All we had to do was bring it up on an elevator and catapult it or launch it. And at that time, the Russians were really messing with this. You people didn't know that, but they were horsing around with the Americans every day in the Mediterranean. They were always zooming around with a destroyer or something. We'd wake up in the morning and go out, and there would be Russian ships in our flotilla of 5 or 6 or 7 American ships. Frankly, they had brass balls bigger than a monkey, okay? And that's why today I still can't stand a Russian I was asked to help coach some Russian kids in baseball a number of years ago, and I said no, I won't do it because they're Russian. Can you imagine hanging on to that? Can you imagine hanging on to something in Vietnam and not ever giving up on it? That's, you know, it was called the Cold War.
So which ship were you on?
That's another story.
My brother was on the
I went to
USS. My brother was on the USS.
42, the FDR. I was on it once. Careful, go ahead. I think, Don, do you have any more?
No.
Yeah, I believe that Carol Bernier Young would like to take us over to her family.
It's not my grandma and grandpa.
Pardon?
They're in Centerville.
Are they Cyril? Yeah,
Yeah,
they
they're
would
in
be.
Centerville. So
Okay.
it's my mom and dad. We met fun.
Okay. Gloria.
Where's Telesphore?
Telesphore is
Gloria
buried
has
here. She said,
Yeah, Gloria knows
Gloria
where
said
he
she's
is.
going to show us.
Oh, okay.
Shows what?
Telesphore?
Telesphore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, we know where it is.
Yeah.
We can find it.
But
Yeah,
I
we're,
mean,
we're gonna,
that's
we're
my
gonna
mom
go
and
over
dad.
this way. I'm gonna bring some grass seed here and just spread it all over. Right before it rains.
If you have any relatives that were limited.
Yeah. Lorraine. Lorraine, Linda, Mike Creever, Judy,
Nope.
Gloria, no?
No, you were in St. Paul. You didn't have him as a teacher.
He was a baseball coach, a softball
This
coach.
is Jim Gitzen's grave, a teacher of ours. I don't know, I think he was in White Bear by the time Gina got into school, but he was a teacher. He came to us, yeah, he came to us in about 1951 out of St. John's College. World War II veteran. He was in the battle of boat. And he didn't say too much about it, but you knew that he was pretty strict. He ran a pretty taut ship, I can tell you that, in that classroom.
If you didn't behave, he had a dictionary. You throw the dictionary at some of the grave and find the word go and keep writing till you get to the word stop. Somebody told me that about him.
But he's the one that wrote the book, both of the history of the American Legion in Tempe, or excuse me, I'm not in Arizona, in Hugo. Sorry about that. Can you erase that?
Oh, I'm keeping it in there.
Anyway, he wrote the book on the Post 620 American Legion. He was one of the original members. And then secondly, he's the one that wrote the book on St. John's. And there's just a brief article on the cemetery, and I have it with me, but he wrote the book on St. John's, the Baptist Church. And it's over 100 pages. So he spent quite a bit of time on that.
You can find both of those books at the White Bear Library, but you cannot check them out. You can copy them, but you can't check them out. I have one in the
I got a copy too.
But
There you are.
you can't get
For some reason, our mothers thought that we should have a book, and so they went ahead and bought books and handed them out to the kids. True story. That's how I got mine. Anybody else? Were you gonna?
I got some over here.
Hey, if there's anything along the way, I forgot to mention. I don't know why all of you are here, other than the fact that you might have a relative or a brother or sister or someone in your family that is buried here, a parent. So if we're going by an area that you're interested in, please stop us. This is very impromptu, extemporaneous, okay?
The only thing I can say
Go ahead.
is Jim Getz was hired by Joe Mary, or he was part of the school board or something at the time, and he lived at Joe's until
Yep.
he got married. Did you say?
He married Dolores Morset. The Morset grave, we went by it earlier. Yeah.
her ancestors. Her grandfather came from France with my grandfather. And
Was that Louis Morse?
Louis
Yeah,
Morset
yeah.
was Dolores' father.
they came together in
There were 3 girls in the family, all just really good-looking ladies. Dolores, Ramona, and
This is going to kill my arm.
And they live right next to the bank.
yes, they did.
Yeah.
What was the third one?
The Legion, the old Legion was there too. The old Legion was there too.
Oh yeah, that's where the first Legion was, in the old Morissette Bar
Yeah.
in 1947. Yes. Okay. You got it.
Gloria,
Okay.
following Gloria.
There's just too many stories.
And how they all interconnect, that's the interesting thing. You know, your grandfather was in the war with my grand, you know, I mean, it was all over.
Yeah, we're still working on that
Did
one.
they ever? Jeez, Peter is a schlug.
Yeah, it's funny, right? No, they're on the same time.
Did you ever have Jim Getz? Didn't somebody steal it? Is that what happened? I thought I heard that. Jennifer's just going to have to cut all this out. All the walking. I was going to get a shot of that. I don't know how they're
Some of the gemstones would kind of break your heart every once in a while when you look at them. This is one that stuck with me. It's a young woman, aged 25 years old, and baby. So she died in childbirth in 1910. That happened a lot to young women. But this is the baby apparently was born. Sometimes they give the baby a name, sometimes they don't. Our great grandmother died in childbirth. And I think it was around 1910, around this time. But her death certificate says she had been in labor 6 days. And the baby apparently was never born. But that's sometimes what happens. But this is, some tombstones just grab your heart. This one was one of them. What's the last name? The last name is, I believe, Arcand.
Arcan?
Yeah. Yeah, it's.
Must be from
And
the
that's, I
Bastards
guess,
family.
another point that I want to. I know sometimes people, they don't realize they have a headstone, but then sometimes a footstone doesn't give the last name. So when you're thinking about your tombstone, have them put the last name on it, just because it's.
Tombstone etiquette.
Yeah.
Linda and I dug up 2 of those about 3 years ago.
God, yeah.
And it turned out
cardinal.
they were our great
Cardinal.
grandparents. And we discovered it, and Linda and I put a big footstone in. It's right over
Well,
there.
not just you and I. We had a lot of cousins
It's over there.
participate.
Okay. This makes a point. This last name is Cardinal.
Yeah.
Is it? That's why you've got a headstone. Who is who here? It's not always. They're not always related. So it gets confusing at times. So what's your last name?
If you travel from here to Centerville, you're going to go over the freeway today, over 35, and just on the other side of 35, well, Bill Hull used to live there, and the Centerville Cemetery is just to the west of that. That was called the Futsio Road. Donald's shaking his head. That's what our parents called it, because that was the French pronunciation, and that's where the Fortiers lived. And I've often wondered if there's any remnants when I get on it, Mary.
behind you.
Mary.
Behind you.
Be careful.
Often,
I might hurt you.
oftentimes when I go from Mary's house, I'm traveling, I take the 170, I think it is, all the way, and then when you have to get off where it comes to a T by Peltier Lake, that is the Footsio Road. What's there? There's a Shell gas station on the corner. So these are the things that those of us that grew up in this town, these are the things that we remember, you know.
You
Go
know,
ahead.
my dad always said, he always said it was the Footsio Road too.
Yeah.
He said it meant chimney road.
Is that
You
right?
guys hear that too?
You know from Joe Plankton's book, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Footsio Road means the road with all the chimneys on it.
Also, where theirs and my relatives and all of them was Old Brisson Road before.
Yes.
Before it was Homestead Avenue.
Yeah.
So
I'll be
it
there.
was called Old Brisson Road.
then now Miron Road.
Well, it's Homestead Avenue
I know,
now.
I know.
But there was a bunch of Brisson brothers all around that whole area.
Yes.
You know anything about it? You saw the name? Did you know anything about it?
Forcier Road is where
He's denying it.
my grandma was. Mine is the other thing.
You want to go say something about it?
That's where Ray is buried, right over there. See the Cummings one right there? You can't see it.
Oh, we're in here.
That's where
It was by his mom and dad.
Yeah, because they had 8 bonds, and so I'm now the executor of those bonds. But I actually gave them over to my daughter. Yeah, because we have a double. I had a double, so both our names are on there, and I have my last name, me, Teresa.
Well, I belong to St. Odelia and Columbine.
Yeah.
So I already bought our
Columbine,
Yeah.
Oh, they don't have them on here.
But they're the thing of the future.
Oh, we have at Guardian Angels. We have
Yeah.
6 now.
My mother.
Go 5 years to get for the city.
Columbine?
They're where you have your little
Just put a
your
urn in.
remains in.
You put an urn in, yeah. But you can put 30 or 60 depending on the size of it.
See how much each of them. So then they built the second one there.
I got a job here to do. My arm's getting tired. My arm's getting tired.
I know.
Where are we going? Okay, over there. Why do we have this here? La Rue. More etiquette? More etiquette? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, I believe in pre-planning and picking out your gravesite and picking out your stone, but you got to give it a little bit more forethought than some of these two people did. Edmund and Arvilla,
Yeah.
they were born in 1907, and she was born in 1913. Well, they put in their stones, and they decided that, okay, we're going to probably die before, the year 2000. So they put in 19, and both of them lived. One lived to 2003, and the other lived to 2001. So they had to correct their stones to work with them. This is where you have to see what happened. I'm not the only. Pre-planning is good, but Everest,
the Raines family is right over here. Did you want to say anything about your family? Her grandfather Henry was a World War I veteran and a farmer. Anything?
He talked about it for many years. He talked about how horrible it was in the trenches with the rats.
Yeah, you're on if you want to lead us over there. Okay.
There's some orange flags over here. That's where
Oh, they're straight up here.
This is my grandmother, my dad's mother, Marie. She got married to Peter Marrier. And they had 5 kids, and when my dad was 8 years old, Peter died of appendicitis. And she had 5 kids, with my dad being the middle one. And she married his first cousin, Henry. After that, he was a worker on the farm when they had the farm right in check that right now. That's their farm. That was their farm. And so she married Henry, but he was in World War I before she married him. He was in the trenches of France. He fought in the trenches. So yeah, we have a little flag for him here.
Old mermaid.
Pelican.
Oh.
Pelican.
Oh, that's where the relation with the Pelican store became the Marrier store and all that.
No, that's a different Pelican. Actually, that was a different Pelican, a cousin. No, my dad bought that in the 40s. Yeah, from a Pelican. But anyway, Henry, this is the World War I vet. He's my dad's stepfather.
While we're all close together here, I want to mention, I would like, you know, these grave sites get kind of chewed up and growing over and stuff like that. And I think everybody should encourage, there should even be an article in the Hugo Gazette, if that's still going, about coming out here and cleaning up your grave site. Well, the 2 footstones that Linda and I uncovered, we wouldn't have even known they were there if we didn't clear them. And you know, all they had was the first name of the people that were buried there. Anyway, encourage people to come out and clean up their gravesite, because the people that care for the cemetery, they're not going to weed eat around everything. There was one gravesite that John, stepson John McDonald and I, we actually took a saw and sawed around everything on the Brisson lot over there. It was so overgrown that the weed eater wouldn't cut it. It was just thick, hard dirt. So we took a saw and cut around maybe 12, 14 grave sites. So
You don't want to use a weed eater. They don't use them out here because weed eaters wear off the littering eventually.
what?
they wear off the stone.
I suppose just like a tree, they kind of chew at the bark. Anyway,
The church did have a committee, but they came out one summer.
One summer they haven't come up for a while again to raise the tombstones.
It was a very hot day. It was a huge amount of work. They would dig up the gravestone, put sand under it, and put it back in. It took them a long time to do one.
What has this been
But they're
the
heavy.
last 3 years that we've gone out and cleaned them up
Yes.
so she could, and within a year they're already growing over.
Yeah, we're gonna go look at a World War I vet that his gravesite was totally covered, and I found it by sticking the pole in the pan and trying to reveal it. So let's go look at that and see what shape it's in after it's here.
Abby Marrier.
Andrew Meyer.
I don't even.
It says,
Love never
faileth.
faileth. Oh.
Love never faileth, and the date, 1939. Not a clue.
Who the heck is it?
Yeah.
It's not in the records. It just, that's it.
It's kind of cool.
Yeah, it's kind of cool, but
I wonder
yeah,
if it
would
was
be
a
nice
baby.
to know who it is.
I wonder if it was a baby.
Pardon?
Does the church have a record of everybody?
The church has a record, and what I found is by going through grave by grave, we are missing about 10%. Some people were better record keepers than others, and it's kind of been consistent throughout the year since 1900. Just some things got missed, so we're trying to make sure all there. See, this one will be there, but it'll be as unidentified.
I suppose. And not everybody is created equal. Yeah, but going way back. Going way back, they were less. That was
Oh, you did the flag thing. I was wondering how you were knowing where to go.
Oh yeah, that's what I marked him. Okay, this is Richard Granger. I talked to him this morning.
How are you?
George Madness.
Yeah, this is George Madness. When I came out here last summer, this and his spouse were totally, and it was just all grass. You could see nothing. So I went around, trying to line up those sites here where people are buried, and finally found them. But this is, I could trying to do this with just hand tools. As you can see, I didn't uncover it a whole lot. I just uncovered enough to identify it. But I talked to the Legion people and said, these are veterans. We need to have this stone raised. And it's something with, all of your families out here. It's important because we're going to lose them. We would have lost that one if I wouldn't have come back, and I said, I know it's here somewhere. And I tried to find it. But they do need to be raised. It costs money. It costs about $100 each to have them raised because it's like 3 to 4 hours work to do it. They have to, somehow get underneath it and raise it and then put stuff underneath it. So it's not an inexpensive thing going on. The men's club did some of it, but as they said, they're getting a little bit older too, and it gets harder to get that volunteers work harder. But again, this was totally covered by sod. It would have been lost forever, and we're working on trying to get the Legion anyway to raise some of the veterans. And I gave them a list of the names of the veterans graves that need to be raised. There's about 10 of them. But it's important to do that. Madness name, this is a World War person, a World War I vet. So we want to honor his grave and see if we can get it raised. And talk to your families and talk to the church. Talk to Mary, who's on the cemetery committee. So is
And George.
So is George. Okay. Yeah, you've raised a lot of them, but it needs to be done again and again. Some areas are worse than others. I think this area west of the road here has tended to sink. A lot of them are very, very overgrown, if you've noticed. So if you have family out here,
Take care of them.
Family fundraising. So, and Linda knows all about fundraising for raising the family graves. That's it.
All right, Mike?
Challenge 4 is, I believe,
Oh yeah.
he's right here. He has a cross on top of his site.
Look it up.
I think it's the one right about 50.
Okay.
they went in divisions out of the states, like the North Dakota Cavalry or the Infantry or the Minnesota Infantry.
Could it be Civil War too? Minnesota.
Is it?
Not positive.
Company M, yeah.
I have to go back home. So we're going to be going up north, so I have to get back. But I was going to say, come on over and join us.
How old are you?
I'll be 85 in July. What the hell am I doing out here?
Bigger mic.
Yeah, I don't know. I know, but that was
You're in good shape.
70s and 80s, right?
Yeah. This is Civil War.
Civil War.
Yeah. Antoine Lamott.
I'll come over and see that.
Civil War.
Mike, I have a question. What can you tell us about these trees?
They're all
Trees.
grown.
Who planted them? They're all the same height and in bunches.
Well,
Do you know anything about that?
luckily Adlor didn't cut them down. He used to come in here with his team of
My
horses.
great grandfather had stones in the middle. That's why I'm wondering. I don't know if our family had something to do with that one, or why are they where they are?
I kind of agree. There's a few over here.
Yeah.
There's
Yeah, some back over by Ray.
I mean, they do look like they were planted specifically in
They look
there.
like they're all done at the same time.
And I would
Yeah.
think they planted
got
it
George.
around not realizing how
We're
big
going to do the priest.
Yeah, probably didn't
Priest.
realize how big they were going to get. I mean, that's very likely.
Well, I thought they were by the big cross here. I thought all the priests were by the big cross right here.
Yeah, they're right there in his van.
Yeah.
Somebody was going to try.
Well, why don't we do George right now?
George?
Hey, George! Somebody whistle.
Oh, okay.
That's why we're walking all over.
Next year, remember Charlie, Ray's cousin?
Yeah.
Might want to do something on the cousins. He couldn't come this year. I want to do, he can get his
Yeah.
tour now.
Absolutely.
There's Thomas. Which side is he on?
Oh, I didn't answer grandson.
Where's Tellis? Must be on the other side.
I know the family quite well.
This is just says father.
Gloria, more etiquette.
This is just his father.
Yeah. Carol? Carol's over there.
Carol?
Carol! 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 This is telephone.
Nothing but there's a street where
You're
I left
on.
my phone in the car.
Want to say anything?
Want me to hold it? Getting heavy? Go ahead.
No,
Tell this group who this gentleman is.
well, I already did. It's my great grandfather.
Yeah, but Tom, come in closer. So Carol's got some good stories here. This is a.
That's the one that left his bride at the altar in Canada, in Quebec. And so then he had to get out of town quick. And he ended up coming to the States. And he went to different states for a while, but he ended up in, I think it's Mississippi, but it doesn't really matter. And that's where he was conscripted. And he ran away as soon as he could because he was assigned to be a guard. And guards were very vulnerable. They were, they knew he didn't want to be there. And then he ran north to Massachusetts and joined, but he had to change his name because and this was not uncommon because my mother is a BAME from Forest Lake, and she had a great uncle. The same thing happened. He worked for both sides because he was working down there. People went where they could get jobs, I think. And then eventually he ended up working his way back to Minnesota. And I don't know if he knew people in Centerville or Hugo area. I don't know, but he ended up here. But he was 36 or something, and he married his bride, and she was 16.
Well, that was fairly
That was
common.
fairly
There was
common.
quite an age
Difference.
I don't know, but he was a tough guy. They always said he was really tough.
Yeah.
Well, he had to be, I guess.
Was this Civil War?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
But he came back and he lived in Hugo. I had how many children he had somewhere in here. In my notes. That's his wife. I passed that around me. That's him. A lot of the information comes from.
You actually told a better story last year about he got that girl in Canada in trouble.
Yes. Well, I don't know if he got. This time when I was reading up on it, they said he left her at the altar, but his parents are really mad. I don't think he ever went back to Canada. Whereas my grandfather, Cyril Lacoste, my dad's father, he went back to Canada once to visit, and to see his mother. And my dad, my grandfather, Cyril Lacoste, became a U.S. citizen. That was very important to him. But he just made one trip back there. But I have my grandfather, who I never met either. My mother didn't even meet him. He died before my dad and her were married. His brother lived in Cloquet. He was a barber there, and he was in the fires.
Rush City.
The great big fires that they had. Yeah. And his wife, they had packed their bag, but they didn't even have time to grab their bags. But he had one son who was a priest, and because he spoke French, he ended up in Louisiana because they wanted somebody. But he did a lot of research on the history of the family, and he said that the French Canadians, and it's probably true for a lot of your ancestors, in the 1600s they were cleaning the gutters in France and all over, in Paris and all over, filling up ships, taking them to Canada. When they got to Canada, either Quebec or Montreal, they got off the ship with nothing. And he said that's our ancestors, that's what happened. They were on one of those ships. So, they ended up wanting land, that's why they came here. The land Quebec isn't as good as the land. It's rocky. So all they ever wanted was come and have a farm.
So there's land available.
Yeah.
They had to clear.
Well, at that time they were still settling in West North Dakota, South Dakota, and all those. But they like trees. I don't know.
The story I always heard was that the reason they came to the Centerville area, all the rice lakes had held game. There was tons of game, bird, muskrats, mink, otter, whatever, and ducks, and geese, and deer, and bear, everything. And they could survive on the land until they got the land cleared. My grandpa said it was called the Big Woods area.
My grandfather, when he came back from lumberjacking, then he had to cut all the trees on his property that he had bought. So, I mean, I can't imagine how hard they were. They didn't have what we have. They're doing the road in front of our house, and they killed one tree, so they came with a great big digger, and they picked that whole, I'm talking a huge tree, picked that whole thing up, I'm going, oh my God, and I'm thinking our ancestors had to chop those things down themselves.
All by hand.
Yeah.
No chainsaws.
Yeah, no chainsaws. I have one picture that I think people who have ancestors, this came out of that album I found. that my sister Joan, my dad's sister who was a nun, took before she ended. And this is their farm. And these are, Marvin LaValle told me they're straw stacks. But different cultures do their hay stacks, straw stacks, different ways. And if you look at that, take it and look at it, because the way they do it, they almost weave it. And this is on my farm, halfway between Centerville and Hugo, behind the Blue Heron. That's where my dad grew up. You see that little greenhouse? That's where it was.
Anybody know where my phone is? Anybody have it? Well, I have the phone in my hand.
But it's very
I was thinking I still had that stupid camera.
This particular Lacoste right here, his farm was a little bit like what, south and east of here. No, south and west. Okay, right past the Wenzel farm, and the Wenzel farm is directly across the road from Festival Foods. Make sense? That was the Wenzel farm. Then the Chalice Lacoste farm as we knew it. And a lot of those people that were in the Civil War, Abraham Lincoln in the Land Grant Act gave them 80 acres. And that's where the phrase always came up, the North 80 or the South 80 or the North 40, or they were measuring, whatever the mathematical amount of 80 acres was. It was in different areas, but Abraham Lincoln required every state and territory in 1863 to set aside, I think it was 33,000 acres, that they would have a college, Institute of Higher Learning, and then that bill also included land for the Civil War veterans. And that's why a lot of them ended up here in Minnesota. A lot of them joined the Army from Minnesota, Iowa, Wisconsin. If you've ever visited Civil War sites, I was kind of on a binge for a while, about 3 or 4 or 5 years. Gettysburg, Chattanooga, Antietam, Sharpsburg, Virginia, Bull Run, all that. We've toured them all. And there's just a lot of land that was given to the veterans of the Civil War. And like Carol mentioned earlier, if you got wounded, you got $15 a month.
George's going to show us.
One other thing, George is going to go take us back to where the priests are, right over Vandenbosch.
By that
over
big
there.
cross, by the big cross.
Is that all right?
Okay.
It's about 11:30, isn't it? Yeah.
Quarter to 12 almost. Okay. That's where I was at.
Oh, is that what flag is that? Dutch? Yeah. They were brothers, two brothers.
Two brothers. John is one, and Nicholas.
Yep.
Okay, George, get them all in close. It's kind of hard to hear with the wind.
Father Nick Cody was a pastor here, and Father John Cody was from down by Medford, but he retired, and then he came to live with Father Nick here, and he helped Father Nick for several years until Father Nick retired. So. And they were 10 years apart, but they were both priests. So. And and there's a
the
bunch
recent-
of other priests around here.
What's the recent activity
I
here?
think that's a mole or something has been
Oh,
digging
okay.
in here.
Who
So.
would remember Nicholas Cody? Okay.
Yeah, both of them.
Yeah, I remember John was kind of assistant of some sort.
Yeah, he's just helping out here.
Yeah. He got to where he was doing baptism. We've got 6 priests buried right in here.
Are they the ones?
That had a place up by Cross Lake.
Yes.
And then they would switch with the priest at Pine River and come down here and go up there.
Yeah, help out.
Yeah.
So we got a couple of reverends over there. Do you know about those? 2 priests over there.
Over there?
Yeah.
Yeah, Leventure, Father
This
Leventure.
was a deacon, Tom Barrett was a deacon. That was a deacon.
Oh, is that why he's here?
Story about that too. Father Leventure, I remember my folks telling me that when he'd give a sermon, he'd give a long sermon in French. He'd give a sermon in French and in English, because there was a lot of people that were here that really didn't speak much English at all, and so he'd give a sermon in French and then he'd give it in English. And I think he died in 1941. So. Yeah, he had a beard. I think they both did.
Yeah, he died suddenly in 1941.
Right.
He was somewhere over by Bald Eagle Lake.
And then Father Vanden Bosch, well, he died April 1947, and then that's when Father Fortin came right after that to take over. And then they had a church fire, and Father Fortin. I think they had the fire right around the time he died.
Yes.
February of 1947.
Right.
And he died in April, and Father Fortin was here then, and then he coordinated building of the new church and everything. So.
Yeah. Well, he was a pastor in Centerville for a long time. Yeah, where'd he go? There he is. Let's see. At the turn of the century, 1902, when St. John the Baptist Church was founded or started, he was a pastor in Centerville, and he would come to Hugo to pinch hit, say a mass, and be in there, 3 miles distant. And then later on, he became pastor from Centerville in Hugo, and then I believe that's when they got Father McDonald or one or the other one. I was very familiar with Father McDonald.
There's another priest here, Father Pierregard, too.
Yeah, he was the horse guy, but Father Leventure, here, he was very strict. Catechism, if you didn't know the answer, you had to go kneel at the communion room. Gina. It was too bad my mother picked up that habit of when you were bad or you said a bad word or something like that, you had to go kneel in the corner. You might even miss a meal. Anyway, he was very strict. Let's see, first communion, if the young man or young lady didn't know the question that he asked, they didn't get to make their first communion until next year. Brian's shaking his head, yes. These are stories that we were all told.
There was fear. There was fear you were going to ask.
Confirmation especially. You're going to have a lot of questions for confirmation, and you better know what
Most of
the
the
answer
kids
to
were
the
looking
confirmation
down.
question was. That was when not the bishop, the archbishop would come out and stuff like that. But I don't know if he was trying to make the priest downtown or something feel good, but he was pretty tough on the kids in Hugo. And oftentimes they had almost 50, 60, 70 children that were making their confirmation.
Yep, most of the
And,
church.
they would only come out, once every 5 or 6 years.
Yeah.
So there was quite a conglomerate of young people making their
And a
first
lot of
communion.
different ages because of that.
Yeah, right. Anywhere from 9 to 16.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Tell a story.
Pardon?
Can I tell a story?
Go ahead. Just tell about the
Father of the Venture. Joe Marrier, a few years ago, he told me lots of stories, and I've tried to write them all down. He went to confession one day, on Saturday, and he says, I stole some apples. Father Venture says, where? And Joe says, well, out back here, which is right in the back of the church. And real loud, Father Venture, real loud, those are my apples. And I don't know how many Hail Marys you can The way Joe told his story is just great. Those are my apples.
Well, I'll still bring in on Father LaVenture. He was quite a gardener, as Donald just said. He had apples and stuff like that, but he always had a real nice garden. And he bragged about he had the best muskmelons, there's cantaloupe in town, and he had the best this in town and the best that in town. Well, Vern Pelican challenged him and said, well, I've got cantaloupe that are nicer than yours. He said, bring them in. So Vern hauled one or two of his cantaloupe in there and weighed 10.5 pounds, and it was bigger than the one that Father LaVenture had. However, Father LaVenture bought that cantaloupe from Vern. And Gertrude Vadnais, who her house was right up here, Casey Vadnais was her husband, they got killed. Anyway, she said, I've been selling a whole bushel basket full of cantaloupe for 50 cents, and you paid 50 cents to Vern Pelican for one cantaloupe? Well, I said he embarrassed me, that's why I thought it was 50 cents. But anyway, these are all stories. Brian a little while ago was shaking his head. He knows the story about Father LaVenture, but those are the stories that our parents told us about that particular priest here in Hugo. Perigord, he's in here somewhere.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah, I saw his name.
He's the one that was such a horseman. He had he had two animals. They were both black, but he had a cutter, and a little, the cutter was, a small buggy, sulky. That's what Mom called her. Wheelchair walker was a sulky. Gina and I are brother and sister. Okay, this is the only one in the family that they allowed me to be godfather. Okay, I had a couple notes about LaVenture that people have told me stories. I'll try to get to them. He was real fond of music, and he took Dorothy Burkhardt and Dorothy Hoole. He put them in a music school in St. Paul, where they went in once a week to learn how to play the organ and learn how to sing. And if you remember, those of us that are around when Moses walked on the Red Sea,
I don't think it was that long ago.
it was they were very important in the music at that church. Dorothy Hoole and Dorothy Burkhardt, who lived right over there, and Dorothy Hoole up on Highway 61, married Mark Hoole. Oh, let's see. I guess that's pretty much it. Father LaVenture was a gymnast. He bragged about how strong he was. He could sit in a regular kitchen chair, hardback chair. Someone had to steady it. I'm sure there were plenty of big men in Hugo at that time. And he could hold up a person with his legs and lift them up and move them Uncle Jerry Brisson, your grandfather, told me if anybody got into a discussion with him and he didn't like it, he would challenge them to go outside and settle it outside. He was a gymnast, okay, in France, and when he came over here to America, he brought his strength with him. So that would be about it, what I have. Here's some people. Well, Father LaVenture also made his own wheat wine. The feed mill would sell him 500 to 600 pounds of raw wheat every year, and he would brew wine. This is a story from Joseph Marrier. Joseph Treffley. Where did she go?
Here, right here.
Okay, I'm sorry. I can't see the forest for the trees. Anyway, he would buy 500 to 600 pounds of wheat from the Hugo feed mill every year, and he would brew his red wine, his wheat wine, And the story was, if he had you over to his house and he offered you one glass of wine, you definitely felt it. But if he offered you 2 glasses of his red wine, you came back with a real grin on your face and a beam on your face. Now, I'm staying with two real sophisticated wine drinkers,
Well,
okay?
sophisticated is a little strong.
Wine drinkers, yes.
And I wish that we had some of Father LaVenture's wine, his wheat wine, and they wouldn't stay up so late talking and drinking wine, all right? Because it's past my bedtime. But anyway, he was known for his red wine, and he was known to get a parishioner pretty well buzzed with his red wine.
Is that what he used for church?
Pardon?
Did he use that for the mass?
He probably did, yeah.
Now there's where Father Pierre got his.
Okay. All right, George. I had my fun. Go ahead. Some of the prominent people that have stories about him: Mark Houle, Joseph Marger, Jerry Riopel, Marcel Miron. Your dad had more than one story about Father LaVenture.
One time he said, I think they only had a stove for heat up in front of the church at the time. And my dad said that Charlie Cummins had his mittens on. He was clapping them there, and Father LaVenture says, Charlie, if you're cold, come and sit up here where it's warm next to the stove. So
He was sitting in the back.
he was sitting back a ways. He said, come on up here where it's warm.
And everybody bought a pew then, and it was, I think, $8 a year to rent that particular pew. And at that time, that was quite a bit of money for some of these people, $8 a. And nobody could sit in. The family could sit in the pew, but in order for anybody that was a stranger in church, you had to be invited to go up there.
All right.
Father Perigord is over here. He was the horseman.
Yeah, that's that tall cross over there.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Oh, I see it now. Yeah, go ahead.
And I don't know him, but he was one of the first pastors.
Yeah, he was. Father Perigord was here 1903 to 1910.
Type it up or something.
So that was when, well, Van den Bosch came for 1 year, and then Perigord came, and then Van den Bosch came back at a later time.
I can type it up real fast.
Van den Bosch came back in 1941 and then 1947.
I'll just get it. Can I have that information?
Oh, this?
Yeah.
Sure.
And then I'll type it up and we can have it as a souvenir.
Absolutely.
Because then we can get
Are we
it
done?
to the historic. We can get it to the historical commission.
Okay.
Are we done?
I'm done, yeah.
So we're done.
Listen up.
Those of you that want to join us for lunch over at City Hall here. Everybody knows where it
Gotta
is.
go around
You gotta go around the bushes
and
here.
get to the parking lot, I think.
No, go
No,
down.
go down this way.
Go down this way and turn right. It's right there. Yeah, Hugo City Hall.
Yeah, this one didn't have one little bit.
Okay.
Sorry, let's go down here.
You got one more?
Yeah, I think it's
Where the end
worthy.
of the ball field was.
Where we used to play ball.
One more thing from Michael.
Yes.
This particular piece of property here was donated to St. John's Parish. The document that was transferring the deed, and it was LaValle property, which LaValle's farm is right over here, and that was a field right there, LaValle Field, was signed by John and Julia LaValle. They couldn't read or write. Actually, they placed their X on the paper because neither could read or write. The roadway property, right there, huh? The roadway property, in turn, was accepted by the village, who could create a road from the road that went between Hugo and Centerville and ran out here to the cemetery. I remember it one time because I had a 54 Ford and I ran into the fence. I didn't feel very good about that.
Were you drinking some of that wheat wine?
Village officers at that time were Mayor F.E. Henney and members Joseph Carpenter and David Gagne. Authorization for the land transfer from the church to the village was by Archbishop John Ireland. How many of you have heard that out of the city hall.
Excuse me, is that,
Okay.
is that Frank Heaney?
I'm sorry?
Was that Frank Heaney, the first mayor of Eagle? Yeah, Frank Heaney, the first mayor of Eagle, married my great grandmother after Abel Ethier died. Yeah,
Okay.
and then they moved in with my grandfather Steve Ethier and the family on Prosperity in St. Paul's, where my dad was born.
Okay. And your name is?
My name is Philip Ethier, or Etsy if you're in
Are you
Quebec.
serious? Well, who was your father?
My father's Orville Ethier.
And they had a farm out east
Yeah,
of
so
Hugo.
the barber was my dad's uncle.
And we just went by Peter's grave over there. Do you have any more you want to add? You're more than welcome.
So who did you just go past? Which one did you just go past?
Emo.
Emo and Albert are buried right over there.
Oh yeah.
Emo
Yeah.
Ether.
Yeah.
That would be Jim and
Yes, and the year date on Emil Etier's grave is wrong. He was actually born in 55, not in 56. The date and the month are correct, but the year is wrong.
Okay.
I've got the documents from Quebec.
Okay, well here, if authorization for the land transfer from church to village was by Archbishop John Ireland, if one goes to the exact center of the old part of the cemetery, the graves of John and Julia LaValle can be found. So there were 3 acres that were given to the church for the original cemetery. And when Father Fortin came in, he's the one that put the fence up all around the property. He was very, very adamant and strict about the records. For up to that point, the records weren't very well kept. He was just kind of caustic sometime, or a little bit. I'm sure Judy's saying, "But you're the same way, Mike Creeper. So why would you say it about him?" But anyway.
I'm running out of battery.
Anyway, for some reason, there were things when he got on it, like that monument that I pointed out, and we were right close by when we first started out. The cemetery records, he realized that up to that point, all the priests that went through here didn't really do a good job in locating the plot and the place where the person was going to be born. My step-grandfather, Adlor Tiro, was buried right over there. A lot of the measuring that he did was just like this, okay? And my brother and Mike Gibbs, Mary's husband, they dug graves with Adlor. Delor is what they called him. And his last name was Tiro, T-H-E-R-O-U-X. But they both told me, oftentimes when they were digging a grave, it had to be 32 inches this way and 6 feet 6 inches in length and stuff like that. We were pretty close to the grave that was with us. In fact, some of the times we were rubbing wood to get enough room to put that gravesite in there. So, but Adler was the historian of the Hugo Cemetery, and now we relinquish that job to Gloria Gebhardt. Okay, she has done a terrific job. Linda and I have come out here in the middle of the summer 3 or 4 years ago, and she's out here walking this cemetery and trying to get records for you people. So, with that, hey, Don mentioned there's going to be a potluck at the Village Hall.
Yep.
Right?
Yes.
Yep.
And
Right now.
right now.
I've
It's
got the
about
key.
12 o'clock straight up.
Gloria has the key.
Brian? Where'd Brian go? You got it?
Right here.
Oh,